We continue our conversation tonight about how I-40 impacted the Jefferson Street corridor. We're going to go right to Reverend Fuzz. I understand you're online too. It's been a while, Reverend. How are you?
Hello, let me see. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I got a question before us here, and I'm definitely not going to blame black people, okay? We keep talking about it. This has been a pet peeve of mine. When it comes to the black community of Nashville, it's always described as Jefferson Street or North Nashville. And that's what describes the black community. And that's always been something that irked me. Jefferson Street is named after Thomas Jefferson. Wow, that's something to me. Okay, so when we talk, and I heard you talk about reparations, to me, what I've seen, the responsibility for the middle class, the black middle class in Nashville exists not because of business owners, but because of education. The great education institutions we have here, probably like 5 HBCUs here in Nashville. That's not in most cities. That's so amazing. Other cities, you just don't have that many. So I'm going to ask this question. What I see are those people who are successful are people who are educated. They go and get their education. And I know so many young people today who are moving on up because of education. So we have Tennessee State University at the end of the Jefferson Street corridor. And I don't hear us talking about investment in education there. And my last statement is the highest paying jobs in a community, in any community, is the university and the hospital. And so we got that medical college and we got that great Tennessee State. Those are businesses, don't you think? So why would you think about investing in education in Tennessee State, in Meharry, in Fisk, and letting that be the foundation of propelling this community, and not just blacks, but the whole community? When we invest, and you got to realize, you're hearing it in the news. I heard it on Channel 5. TSU is owed $500 million from the state and somewhere like that. And so why wouldn't we talk about that kind of reparation being in education and promoting education? You get an education, man, it's hard to hold you down. Those are the people who have the businesses too, are people for the most part who are educated. So I want to get you to put some input on what about education, and what about taking the name Thomas Jefferson off of the black community? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend. When I get to town, I'm hoping you can take me out to Prince's, where we can enjoy a good meal. But I want to be clear. I want to direct people to a report that spurred this conversation. It's to restore North Nashville's black middle class. Local policymakers should pursue reparations. Now, we did not talk about the theft that occurred with TSU, but we know that the state had denied TSU the proper funding over the years, and they should restore that wealth that was extracted by racism. So that is included in a reparations package. We should address that injury. It's not just from the highway being built. There's also other forms of discrimination. I will say this about education. It's important, but I also want to just be clear. Education does not predict for wealth. Wealth predicts for education. And so when you have a lack of wealth, it generally, in the main, lessens the likelihood that you'll go to college. And so We like to think that you go to college and you will be thrusted in the middle class, but even people with college degrees have significantly lower wealth, 7 times less wealth, Black people with college degrees, 7 times less wealth than their white counterparts. So education helps, but it doesn't close these gaps. And so we need to address discrimination in multiple levels, in education, in housing, in business development, in economic development. But oftentimes we point to education as a savior, but it's like many other sectors that it's not going to be a panacea. Like people will say, look, we need more business ownership. That's not it either. In many different sectors, we just need levels of investment. Oftentimes, I also, as a former dean, and as someone who has worked in K-12 education as well, I often hear people say, if we can only fix education, everything will be all right. But that, for me, has been just a sly way of not addressing transportation, of not addressing housing, not addressing business development, to lump everything on education. And by the way, white people didn't earn or didn't get 10 times more wealth because they were more financially literate, they were more college educated. They got more wealth because federal policy enabled them to get more wealth. Federal policy denied Black people wealth through redlining, biased housing policy, biased criminal justice policies. All of these things eroded wealth in Black communities. And so for me, it's about addressing the drags of racism in all markets, including education, so that we can see greater economic mobility, greater social mobility in these neighborhoods. But again, I want to be clear. I believe in education. I want everyone to go to school, but I also want people to be able to use that education to purchase homes, to get businesses, and oftentimes we're not able to because we're saddled with debt. Now, and I want to be clear also. I'm certainly on a campaign to cancel student debt. You can find a lot of my reports on cancel student debt. Just this. Google Andre Perry cancel student debt. You'll get a lot of great reports, because when you cancel student debt, you close Black-white wealth divides at every wealth level. And so and when you cancel student debt, you enable people to purchase homes, start businesses, because Black people have proportionally much more debt than other groups, because we believe in education. See, and that's a misconception. People say we don't believe in education. No, we're actually going to college at high rates now, but we're taking on disproportionate amounts of debt, and it limits our wealth building. It forces us into jobs, not the ones we want, but the ones that will tell us we'll pay back student loans. So so I say all that to say, let's not say education is the key. Let's say building wealth is the key, getting that protection is the key, and it will improve educational outcomes, home ownership rates, business rates. Let's remove the drags of racism, and that is the route we can take, and reparations encapsulate all of that.
Perfect, Andre. We are going to head to another break, but we'll be right back.